sorry to jump in before the actual tutorial, but I got a couple of tips to throw your way just before you delve into the actual painting. Um, this is for you beginners out there, so if you're adept, just skip ahead to the tutorial. And, well, to be fair, if you're an expert, you probably don't need this tutorial, so I don't know what you're doing here, but thanks for stopping by anyway. So, tip one, when you're spray painting, don't keep your can still, keep it fast, keep it moving. Unless you want really strong colours or potentially really runny colours or runny paint all over your painting, make sure it's moving fast at a moderate speed. That's just a general tip. And the second one is to keep your spray paint can fairly high above the painting. Don't keep it too low, otherwise you're going to get the same problem with runny, bold colours. If you go for a bold effect, you can keep it low, but make sure it's going at a decent pace. Okay? And you'll see that with me when I'm doing some of the blacks later on in the video. So yeah, you want to keep it high, especially for these types of paintings, high and fairly fast, just to keep the paint light, and it helps with the gradients, which is exactly what one of the textures is for the planets, which I'm teaching today. So yeah, thanks and enjoy the video.
Right, hello everyone, welcome to the first tutorial to do spray painting on this channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do planets. So this is fairly basic, like I said in my previous video, mostly for beginners. Yeah, so today I've chosen blue. It's going to be blue planets. I guess black sky, and I'll potentially throw in a couple of other little details at the end, and I'll teach you how to do those as well.
Okay, post commentary. So here I am with my stencils, and what I'm going to do is use my brightest color to mark out the edges of the stencil, so I know what area I'm working with when it comes to actually creating the textures for the planet. So removing the stencils before I actually start applying. Now I'm going to start with my lightest color, and I'm going to create a very concentrated area on one side of the planet, and then fade out that concentration as I reach the other edge. This is essentially to save a little bit of paint when it comes to creating the gradient, as well as to make sure I have my lightest colors down first before applying my darker ones. You want light before dark. And here I am next with my darkest color, or my second darkest even. And this is just to help with the texture, making sure not to overcoat too much of that bright blue, just because I want to keep that gradient. And the spray paint will actually very much help you create that gradient effect by itself. And then I've got my next darkest blue, which is going over that blue I just applied over the light blue. Now I've got my light blue, my semi-dark blue, and my very dark blue. And finally, I'm going to cap it off with a bit of black. Now with black, you've got to be careful not to apply too much, and you want to move the can fast and low to create these like eyebrow looking things at the top of the planet. That's the first step with black. So do that over each of the planets. And once you've done that, make sure to keep the can a little bit higher than when you're applying the eyebrows, and spray down in short bursts just to create spurts of black that will overcoat the next two blue sections, and that will help create a bit of a gradient effect. Now here I've got my dryer, I'm demonstrating that. I use that to dry the paint out before putting the stencils on again so that the paint doesn't stick to the stencils. Now here I am showing that you can keep two, maybe even just one of the textures you've created if you are unhappy with some of them. So I'm just demonstrating that you can just get rid of the one in the top left if you want, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put my black down now, holding down the stencils so that the black paint doesn't go underneath and touch the planet on the underside of that, because that can happen with spray paint. So what I like to do is spray around the stencil first, directly around the stencil whilst I got the stencil held down, and once I've done that I go around that surrounding edge and then hold the next stencil down and cover that directly around it, and then once they're done I can be pretty free to let go of the stencils, although just keeping them down to be safe is also fine. I mean, there's no strict guidelines here, I'm just a vague guide. So now that they're down, a few details for the sky. I've got my white paint here, and I'm going to spray some onto my finger very closely like that. And the idea is that you flick off the excess paint. I like to flick my finger 4 times, not on the painting, just to get rid of the massive blobs of paint that are going to end up on your fingers. And once you've done that, you can flick the remaining onto your painting, and that will create nice, small, detailed stars. Basically, if you have massive blobs, it's going to end up looking really bad. So I'm just trying to save you from that little funeral right there. Now, sticking with the color scheme blue, I'm going to create a blue gradient. So make sure to move the can fast and fairly low across the painting with your lightest color. And I'm going to do the same, but with the next darkest color just next to it, or on the right of the light blue. This is just going to create that gradient effect in the sky, like on the painting. It's hopefully going to look pretty good. And then I do the same with the next darkest color, just to create that lovely gradient effect, and maybe even into the light blue a little bit like I am now, just to create a bit more power in that light blue color, because by itself it can look a little weak. Going live.
What you want is something with a straight edge. I've got a tile. I've used this tile for every single shooting star I've done. So the idea is that you lower your tile near the painting, don't touch it because it's wet obviously, and you lower your spray paint can next to it low as well. And the idea is that the nozzle will be pointing downwards, down the slate, just hitting near the bottom here, like that. And I'll show you what effect that has. So, this is what happens. So, like that. And you get that shooting star, you see? Now, a note to make is that you're going to have a load of paint on this, and as you do more shooting stars, it's going to start dripping off, and you're going to get fat blobs of paint in your painting. So what I do is I wipe this paint, the slate clean, like so. Or, using your sleeve, this sleeve is very rumpled up, because I often just spray one, wipe it, and then spray another. That's why this sleeve is so messed up, and this sleeve doesn't have so much white on it. So, I'll show you what I do. So, like that, and then I do another, and then I wipe it like that, and then I do another, wipe it like that, do another. Make sure your paint can ain't in the way. Get out of here. Do another, like that, and then another, like that. Do as many as you like. I'm just going to put a couple down here, and then that'll do. And then make sure to take your stencils carefully, lifting them vertically upwards. Don't peel them off to the side or anything, just do it vertically upwards, like so. And there's one of your planets, and then there's the other.
Right, post commentary again. So, for this next technique, you're going to need paper. And magazine paper like this is good, but newspaper paper, I would say, is a little bit better for this technique. So, what you do is you just tear sheets out and you crumple them up into small balls and then fold them again. So, like I'm going to demonstrate here. And that's what you're going to need. You're going to need plenty of those per painting, by the way, so make sure you've got a decent little stockpile going, especially if you want to make a lot of them. Okay, so get your stencil out. This is a moon that I'm going to create, so I'm going to start off with my lightest visible colour. So white on white's not going to work, so I'm using grey. That's going to mark out the edge of my stencil. And the idea for these paintings is you also want to create a slight gradient effect. So I've only got white, grey and black to work with a moon. So I'm starting off with my white, completely covering that area. You're going to need a lot of paint for this. That's what I'm doing here. So creating kind of a rough gradient with my grey. Don't keep anything in line too much. So a lot of white, a lot of grey, and a little less black. You're still going to need a bit of black, but not too much. Then get out your paper, roll it down on the painting, and peel it off like that, applying a little bit of pressure. Not too much. The more pressure you apply, the more paint you want to peel off, and it depends how fast you want to take it. If you press down too hard, you may end up ripping a load of paint up, and then you've kind of got to just keep reapplying paint after that point. So if you take it slow, you're going to be using less paint, you're going to be wasting less time. So just keep applying the paper, rolling it down with some pressure, and peeling it up again. And what ends up happening is you get more and more details. Another step you can take just to peel paint off a small area is to roll your paper up into a ball and then just dab it down onto the areas of choice. Make sure not to use one side of the paper more than once. If a section of paper is dirty, don't use it more than once, unless you intend on spreading the colours around within the planet. So here I'm now applying another layer of grey. Now this is just to add a bit more detail to your image, a bit more depth, and just help make it look a little bit more realistic so that you've got detail underneath the detail. It's just going to help make it look great. So that's what I'm doing here. I've just applied a bit of grey and I'm just peeling it all off again. That's the idea. Just keep peeling and peeling and peeling, and eventually you're going to get some beautiful looking moon. Making sure just to not lose your patience with it and just to keep with it. This technique's very easy. One thing to bear in mind, it's quite a messy method, as you're going to be touching pieces of paper basically covered in paint. You're going to be rolling them into balls, you're going to be folding them over, you're going to be dealing with them basically hands-on. So this is where gloves are pretty essential. Another little technique for rolling the paint off is to just grab one edge of it with one hand and then just lay your hand down on the paper with the other, and that's what I'm demonstrating here. That's very effective for just covering small areas very, very quickly without using the ball, and that's sort of the texture you're going to end up with. You can keep going the layers if you want. For the next bit, you're going to need a bit of black and a little bit of white, so making sure to keep low and fast with the black. If you cover too much of an area with black, it's going to be very overpowering and it's going to ruin all the effort you've put into your texture, so just make sure to be careful with it. Do the same with the white. Just you need less white than you do black. Just remember that white's also very overpowering, so make sure not to apply too much of that either. And like this, as I'm demonstrating, your gloves do get messy very fast, as do your clothes, like I'm showing here. So especially when you're wiping off that white paint from the tile for the shooting stars. Another note to make is that the stencils themselves will get covered in paint once you're spraying the paint onto them, like this. So paint does end up crackling off them, so make sure just to brush off any kind of loose fragments so that when you're using the stencil that it doesn't get into the wet paint and create some sort of awful diabolical mess. That's what I just like to wipe off any of the paint fragments that I know of. Here I've just put the black down and I've just put a couple of stars down for aesthetics, and here is the moon. Very shiny at the moment because it's wet, but once it's dried out it's a bit more flat and good looking.
Right guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was the peel and the gradient technique. Those are some of the best techniques, and the kind of idea for this video was to show you how to use them and apply them to perhaps a larger, more complex picture. You can just stick to something like that, and that's really good for a beginner. So if you can create something like that, something similar to what I made today, then you're really good to go. You're starting off well. So I hope that helped. I hope you can potentially help me with any feedback, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So thanks, and take care.